Buenos dias. That's exhausted all my Spanish, so you're going to have to put up with English with a slight Irish accent this morning. Well, welcome to day 2. I'm actually surprised to see so many of you here today, but it's hopefully we'll have some fun with this. I should introduce myself. So my name is Richard Erwin. My role at Microsoft, or should I say the newly created Xamarin wing of Microsoft, is a mobile DevOps specialist. And this is actually my second go-around with Microsoft. So I spent quite a few years working there, mainly as a developer tools specialist. And then I decided that I'd really kind of had enough, and I thought I'd kind of get outside of the Microsoft bubble. And I joined a little agile consultancy. We spent about 5 years helping customers streamline their development process. And shortly after that, then I thought, I really want to get into mobile. I want to work with mobile developers. So I joined a company called Xamarin. Hopefully, most people have heard of Xamarin. So essentially, cross-platform native development. So I joined Xamarin, and then they were promptly bought by Microsoft. So I thought, well, that's okay. We're in London, and they're in Reading. It'll be fine. But now, a year later, I can now wave to my old team from about 4 desks away. So I've been sucked back in to the Microsoft world. I just wanted to get a little feel for who the audience is today. Who would kind of primarily identify as a designer? Okay, about half. Okay, that's cool. And a developer? Okay, so vast, probably about 2/3. Okay. And right now, who would primarily identify as being really hungover? Yeah, actually, that's surprising. There's not too many. Anybody who went to the clubs last night, I salute you. If I had have gone, you would be looking at a blank stage right now. I just can't handle it anymore. Okay, so this is what I wanted to talk about today. And if you're one of the designers in the room, you might be thinking, DevOps, that's kind of not really my thing. I don't really care about that. When we think about DevOps, the dev in DevOps is not about developers. It's about development. And designers are a very key part of that development team. So we'll talk a little bit about what DevOps is, why you should care, and then we'll look at really the life cycle of a mobile application. If we have time, we'll do a little demo as well and have a look at that. Okay, so what is DevOps? Kind of the elephant in the room. If I asked everybody in this room for their definition of DevOps, I'll probably get, 100 different definitions. And if you go on LinkedIn or something like that these days, you'll see people recruiting for DevOps engineers. You'll hear people talking about, well, DevOps is just automation. It's about developers working with network engineers or operations teams. But it's not really something that you can do or not do. It's more of a way of working. It's not just about throwing tools at things. And I think probably if you've been to any certainly Microsoft presentation on DevOps, whether it be mobile or not, then you'll have probably seen this chap called Donovan Brown. He's kind of our DevOps senior program manager at Microsoft, and he's got a definition which I think is pretty close to where most people think about this. So DevOps is a union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our customers. Some scary noises coming. And so this isn't something you can just throw tools at. It's not necessarily just a way of working, but you need to have everybody who's involved in the process. They have to buy into this. If they don't, then you're going to fail. If you just throw some, continuous integration tools at this, it's going to fail as well. Everybody has to buy into this. So I thought I'd start with a little DevOps story just to illustrate the journey that a team has been on. And I was thinking about maybe a mobile-specific story that we could tell, but I thought I'd go for essentially the one that I've been closest to, and that was the Microsoft Developer Division. So I'm gonna guess that probably not that many people in the room perhaps use some of the Microsoft developer tools, and so you might not be aware of kind of what they do, but the developer division have been putting out tools for developers for as long as I've been in IT, more than 20 years ago. So I think I first started with the Visual Studio, probably 97 release of this. And so they've been putting tools out for a long time, and they are a big team. So you can see on there are about 4,000 devs working on it. Well, not all devs, but devs and program managers and testers and all the people that make that up. And back in about 2005, they put out their first version of a tool or product called Team Foundation Server. And Team Foundation Server, if you haven't come across this, is essentially a way of tracking your projects. So things like defect tracking, backlog management, continuous integration, lots of things. And so it's a big product, and it's a server product. So you would get a big piece of tin in your organization, you would install this, and then the next version would come out and you'd upgrade that or so on. And so back in 2005, they put out the first version of this. And around that time, they started to embrace an agile process. And that probably was around the time a lot of people were looking at, between sort of 05 and 08, people were starting to think about agile processes. And before that, we all did waterfall or maybe not a lot of planning. And so they really started to train up all their teams. They started to adopt these different processes. And they had about a 15 times reduction in their technical debt. So they really started to focus on quality rather than being very much an afterthought. And that was great. But around 2010, things were kind of changing a little bit. And if you look at some other tools out there, things like GitHub and Jira and, well, Bugzilla and lots of other tools, they were delivered as a software as a service. So not necessarily this thing where you would install something on a box on premise. People were kind of opening up to the idea that, we want software as a service. I don't have to install this and maintain it and upgrade it. I just want to have this service available to me. So they began working on a software as a service version of Team Foundation Server. At the time, it was called Team Foundation Service. Then it became Visual Studio Online. It's now called Visual Studio Team Services, so they can't quite get the name right, but they're getting there. But that was fine, but this was a very different way of working. So they began their kind of journey into adopting DevOps processes. So they really focused on the way they worked, the quality of the tool, and this is a very different thing. So things were going well. They were delivering a service. They had about 1 million users by 2012, and that was going pretty well. And this was a free tool, so it was a free version. It was a preview, but people were using it. And then on November 13th, 2013, they announced the commercial terms for what was then Visual Studio Online. And that was great. If you're slightly superstitious, that's a lot of 13s to do a launch, but they did it anyway. And that was fine. So they launched this and immediately suffered a 7-hour outage of the service. So that's potentially a pretty big embarrassment. You launch this with a lot of fanfare, and all of a sudden, boom, the thing is not available. Bit of a problem. So rather than kind of run from this and kind of hush it up perhaps and hope nobody noticed that you couldn't access for most of the day of the launch day, they embraced this. And so they produced a white paper detailing exactly what happened, where they went wrong, how they've remedied it, and the processes that they've put in place to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again. So you can go and download this. If you have a look in the Microsoft.com/DevOps site, you can go and grab the white paper. But it's very interesting Because what it ultimately came down to is they had a lot of features behind feature flags on the product. And right when they said, right, you can now buy this and get a lot of people signing up, they then had a kind of a perfect storm. They had Europe and the US coming online, and they were missing a key bit of telemetry on their networking stack. And the thing blew up. And one of the main problems with this was that they focused on delivering features. So you want to have lots of features for your launch. So that's where they were spending their time. And they knew that they had to scale out this service, but they put that on the back burner. When we get a few more users, then we'll scale up. We'll put a new scale unit in there. But of course, it couldn't handle it, and it blew up. So they'd gone from delivering a box product every 2 to 5 years to suddenly having to deliver that continuous value. Every month, they're putting out updates, and then they package up all those updates and they put it out to the server product as well. And this is where we are with mobile apps. We can't deliver an app and then 2 years later say, oh, well, now you can upgrade that app. People expect that thing to be continually updating. They expect to have the latest features. Because if your app's not doing it, they'll uninstall your app and they'll move on to the next one. So with the, let me see how that looks on the screen. Oh, you can read that. That's pretty good. I was worried it was too small. So what they did is they produced their 7 habits and 7 habits and practices of DevOps. Now again, this is not a mobile app. This is a software as a service product. But everything here is completely valid for mobile development. It doesn't matter how big your team is. It doesn't matter what technologies you're using. These things are all still valid. The first one is probably, the key one, the flow of customer value. The point from you've had an idea, and we're going through the creation of that product or that idea, and we're validating that everything's okay, and then we're pushing out to our users and our customers. That's our cycle time, and that's what we want to focus on. The quicker that we can produce something and get it into the hands of our users, we're then starting to get that return on the investment. But more importantly than that, we can decide whether that's actually something that our customers want, and do we need to pivot on that. This one is probably, I think, probably quite valid for a lot of people in this room. And this is about working together as a team. Now, as much as you might go, well, we're designers and developers and we work together and it's all fine, there are those silos. People are generally, and I'm using a broad assumption here, developers or designers or testers or program managers. And those silos, we need to break those down. We need to improve the communication between those different functions. I spend a lot of time working with development teams, not on mobile, but in just development teams in general. And people say, yeah, the developers and the testers, they work together just fine. And then you kind of watch the team, and you realize that the developers sat over here, the testers sat over here, and then when it was lunchtime, the developers went for lunch and the testers went for lunch, and they didn't talk to each other. And so these problems were real, and so they would communicate through the tool. They would raise a bug, as many bugs as they could find, and they send them off to the developers, but they would never actually go over there and have a word and say, hey, look, is this supposed to work like this? And so we need to break down those in. We need everybody working towards the same goal, working off the same backlog, and working with the processes that make sense for them. Who's using what the class is an agile process? Maybe Scrum or maybe Kanban. Yeah, okay, that's most people. Okay, I was kind of expecting that answer. The other option, I think, is just basically you have no process and you just kind of code until things work. And that might work as well. But in a traditional kind of Scrum process, you have a product owner. And you might not call them a product owner, but they will decide what it is that we're going to focus on. What are we going to build? What is the most important thing for our project? And then the designers and the dev teams and the testers will go off and they'd build that and they'd work in the iterations. With the DevOps process, we're not using one person So he or she will say, right, this is the most important thing. What we're going to do is we're going to refine our backlog with learning. So every item in our backlog is a hypothesis, it's an experiment, and we'll deliver that to our customers, and then we'll take the feedback from those customers. And if they decide that that's not really what they want, or they're not using it, or it's not right, then we have to decide whether we need to pivot or persevere. Do we need a little improvement, a little tweak on that? So we're going to drive our backlog with validated learning. We'll gather our evidence in production. So as we're doing this, we're thinking about, well, okay, well, if we're having crashes, if people are using certain features or functionality, that's what we're going to grab that information and use that to drive the things that we focus on. And this is probably my favorite one, is manage technical debt. And we'll talk more about this in a second. But nobody likes fixing bugs, right? It's kind of one of those things, you know you've got a little bit of a problem, but hey, we'll do that later. When we get things out there, we'll figure it out. And of course, nobody ever goes back and refactors that code that they were just hacking together to get working. No one will offer to go and do some bug crunching or go and fix up those bugs. So what we want to do is make sure that at the end of each iteration, we have something that is of the quality that we could push out to our customers. Because with mobile, we only really get one chance. If we mess this up, users go, oh yeah, don't use that app because it's really buggy, it doesn't work. So we want to make sure that we're getting things right first time. And we also have that production first mentality. So thinking about how are we going to detect that something is going wrong on the app? How are we going to know that we're getting crashes, users are having problems on certain devices and so on? We need to be thinking about that during our development, making sure that we're including the SDKs and so on that will give us that information. And then finally, thinking about scale. So let's say we get mentioned on a really popular blog or Reddit or something like that, and suddenly our app gone viral, everybody's installing it, our user base is going off the charts. If that happens, can we handle that? Will our database crash? What's happening on our back end that suddenly so many people are using it that it's just crashing and it's going wrong? Because that's our moment. That's our moment to really have that number one app. And if we blow it, and everybody goes, yeah, it was kind of cool, but it just crashed all the time, or it didn't work on my device, then we've got a problem. We've lost our opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of DevOps. And a lot of the things that we've just talked about so far have really just been, I suppose, generic development practices and so on. And mobile development has some unique challenges, which maybe web developers and so on don't have to necessarily think about quite so much. Probably number one there is device fragmentation. So it's less of a problem in iOS, but getting worse. You know, they're getting some devices out there. It's growing, the number of devices and the spread of the operating systems is definitely growing. But on Android, you don't know what device people are using. Could be any number of form factors, any number of processors or memory capabilities or manufacturers. And so we've got a bit of a problem that we need to think about that. Who's accessing our app and what devices are they using? Apps are becoming much more complex. We need to think about our back end. We need to think about our scalability. But the number one thing, I think, is just the user expectation. So how many times have you thought, well, I need an app to do something? And you'll go to the store and you'll do a quick search. And you'll download the first app. How long do you give it before you decide that it's not for you and you move on to the next one? About 30 seconds, a minute? You'll install that, and if it has a problem, if it doesn't look right, if it's slow, you go, yeah, I'm not using that, I'll move on to the next one. And that's what most people will do. There are huge expectations on mobile, and we have typically very short sessions. People will not give it a long time. So we need to be able to get the features out to our users as quickly as possible. We can't wait for these kind of long release cycles. So I suppose the main things, we've talked about a lot of these, but we want to improve communication, we want to increase, or rather reduce our cycle time and improve our ability to focus on the things that actually matter. So most of you were talking about working in a kind of agile or scrum kind of way. And you might be using Kanban or some other process. But ultimately, we typically have iterations. And we will say for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we're going to concentrate on these things. And at the end of that, the idea is that we have something that is potentially releasable. We don't have to release, but it's potentially releasable. It's of the quality that we would expect for our project. Usually, what happens is we don't quite get there. Maybe we don't finish everything that we kind of planned on, or you know what, we got that, we implemented that backlog item, but maybe there's a little bit of a bug in there. It doesn't look quite right. The designer said that it doesn't look quite as it should, and so we ignore that and we move on to the next sprint, and the same thing happens again and again and again. And before you know it, the amount of technical debt, the amount of bugs and problems and issues that you have will be more, or will take you longer to fix than just one of your iterations. And I've seen this with customers who have entire backlogs which are just bugs. So they've said, oh yeah, you have probably heard of like stabilization sprints and things like that. We don't want to have those. We don't want to have, we'll do all the development, and then at the end of it, we'll try and test it and figure out what the issues are. Because of course what happens is we find an issue that's maybe architectural, we need to change something quite substantial in the app, and that's going to delay our ability to deliver to our customers. And so technical debt is not still linear. It will just increase, and it will increase faster the more we let it fester in our project. And you may have heard the term slowing down to speed up. It's the idea that we reduce the amount of things, the amount of features that we've promised to do for that next iteration or for that next release. Limit the amount of features and things that we will work on, to actually make sure that the things that we put out are as they expect. Because if we say, yeah, we'll do all those things, we'll have all those features, the chances are they'll be full of bugs and they'll be maybe half-baked. And so what actually we do is our velocity goes down, our ability to deliver goes down as we spend our time effectively going back and fixing those bugs. So we want to have, again, the minimal viable product. So what's the thing that we can put out there of good quality, but make sure that it's enough to give us the decision points. Do we need to pivot? Do we need to change? And again, you've probably seen this kind of thing before, but the earlier that we can find our defects, the less time and cost that it's going to give us. So we find a problem, let's say when we're doing our requirements, we're doing our architecture, and we say, well, actually, that's going to be a problem. Let's switch that around. Let's change how that's going to work. We're doing it in development. We're running our unit tests, and things are starting to fail. Okay, fine. Well, we can fix that. Ooh, I've lost my screen. There we go. It's back. And then if we just get it into the hands of our developers, our testers rather. But again, our development team are working on a feature. They put it out there, and now they've moved on. They're moving and working on something else. And of course, then the beta testers or the QA teams are looking at this, and they find an issue. That's going to come back to us. And now what we have to do is effectively switch back into that feature and say, okay, well, did I write this? I don't think I wrote this code, but maybe I did. And so effectively, you're switching back in, and that switch will take time and cost more money to work on. And if we get it out into our customers, we've got it out in production, again, there's a massive jump in the time and the cost on only our reputation and our product that will affect that. Has anybody had a review like this? Oh, yeah. So this is. I mean, people are savage on reviews for apps, and so you see this kind of stuff a lot. 1-star reviews, and it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much for people to give you a 1-star review. But believe it or not, this review is actually a little bit helpful. We can actually use this to drive some action. If we look at the components here, what we're saying is, okay, there's a startup problem. So why would we be getting a startup problem? It will not, the app is not launching. Okay, well, what's happening? What's crashing there? What's causing that issue? They've mentioned the manufacturer and the device. So again, is this a vendor-specific issue? Is this some sort of Android customization that Samsung or HTC or Amazon or whoever has made that's causing a problem with our app? Have we tested on one of those? Perhaps not. And then we can see that this is a flagship device. It's going to be quite a large form factor. It's going to be quite a powerful processor and lots of memory in there. Could that somehow be causing us an issue? It's more likely to be somebody with a little cheapo Android phone with not much memory that's maybe causing the issue. But we can take this information and hopefully fix something up. Unfortunately, most reviews rather, just look like that. And this is a real review. My colleague picked it up the other day. So when we talk about device fragmentation, this is a study that was done a few years ago by OpenSignal. And they basically just tracked how many unique devices and how many different types of device were actually accessing and downloading their app. And in the space of 2013 to 2015, only a couple of years, it went up huge amounts. We have huge amounts of devices out there that people are accessing our device, and we need to think about it. So what is the minimum device set that we could be testing our app on to make sure that we're confident that large devices, small devices, old devices, new devices, that we're confident that people are going to get the same experience with our app. So this is where we can think about using a device farm. And there's a number of options out there. But typically, as techies, what we'll do is, most people, I would put a reasonable amount of money on the fact that there's nobody in here with a device or a phone that's older than 2 years. Anybody? Probably not too many. Because most people, they can't wait to get that latest phone. And so if there's a new iPhone now or the new OnePlus 5 was released this week, then we want to get it. We want to get that lovely phone. We'll bring it out in the pub. Everybody's going, ooh, nice phone. And so what happens is when we come to testing and working with our app, we'll typically bring our high-end phone with a nice high-res screen and plenty of memory, and we'll test our app on that. And it works fine. But what about, your mum's kind of bargain basement Android device that she, got from the store that's not, it's a tiny little screen? Are we going to be starting to see things where, you're entering some details and the on-screen keyboard is covering over the button that you need to press to move forward? So what we can do is use a device farm to actually test across a range of devices. And then our designers can have a look at this and go, whoa, it looks terrible on that Samsung device. Why is that? What do we need to change? So we need to be testing on a wide enough range of devices, not just the ones that we have in our pockets. I love this quote from Reid Hoffman, who's one of the co-founders of LinkedIn. And basically he says, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, then you've released too late. And the reason for this is we need to get something out to our customers. We need to make sure that we're working on the right thing. So we've got this great idea. I mean, how many people have you spoken to who go, they find out you work in app development, they go, I've got this great idea for an app. And everybody's got one. However, for every great idea, there are probably 10 terrible ideas that nobody wants. And so we need to be able to get our app into the market and see if people are actually engaging with that. And so we get our minimal viable product out there. This is a screenshot from my OnePlus 3 I took the other day. And this has become a very familiar thing. Every morning I wake up and I see a little bar saying that 11 applications have been updated, 10 applications have been updated. And I go, yeah, I don't care. I didn't have a problem with whatever was there, Twitter or Slack or Word. I didn't encounter any problems. I don't really care that it's been updated. I just swipe that away and move on with my day. But the problem is, someone has had an issue, maybe with a particular device or with a particular way of working with that. And so what we need is to have a continuous delivery model. We need to be able to do exactly that, put an update out to our users before they've even found a problem. So if one user is reporting an issue, or even better, if no users have reported it, but we've detected it, then we can take that, push out an update, and nobody cares. It doesn't affect our reputation. It doesn't affect people's perception of our app. And so, if you look at some of the bigger players like Twitter and Snapchat, they have very fast release cycles. So if they want to push something out, it's there. They automate it as much of that process as possible. So if we think about the life cycle of a mobile application, and you might be sort of looking at some of that stuff that I've talked about today and thinking, oh, we're not that big a team. We just test our app, or we just build it on our machine, or we just do the release to the store manually. But what we want to do is look at the full end-to-end process. From the very moment that somebody's had that idea, wouldn't it be cool if it did this thing? Or let's do that new project, we'll do this, and provide this to our customers. Right from that moment through deciding what it's going to look like, what architecture we need at the back end, designing it, developing it, putting together our wireframes, right through to pushing out to our customers. And we need to look at that and see where are the bottlenecks, where are the problems with communication between the different functions. Where's the waste? Where's all that manual work that we're doing, all that rework that we're doing? We need to figure out where those problems are, because we want to streamline that process right from number 1 through to number 4. So if we look at the various parts of this, so we've decided that we're going to do something, and we're going to maybe do some discovery work, put together our concept and our wireframes, pass that to our design team, who are going to come up with a beautiful design. How are we communicating? Are those people co-located? Are they working in the same place? Have we outsourced the design, outsourced the development? How are we going to communicate that design? How are we going to validate that the developers have implemented the design as the designers actually wanted it? How do we get that feedback from the designers that it looks about correct or what we want to change? Where are we going to store those artifacts? So again, are we using Slack to communicate? Are we using, SharePoint or Confluence to store our data? Or more often than not, it just lives on somebody's machine. So we want to make sure that we're making that process as easy as possible, and allowing us to get the feedback and the communication going between those teams. We also need to track our work somewhere. So if we think about what product are we using to do that? We're looking at the product that we're using for each of these stages. So if we think about something like, again, maybe we have a backlog and we use something like, we might have a Trello board, or we might use Excel, we use something like Visual Studio Team Services, Rally. There's any number of tools out there that we could use, but make sure that everybody has a license for it, everybody has access to it, and that also not just the developers have got access to that, the designers, the stakeholders, everybody should be able to see that backlog, understand exactly what we're working on. Maybe even better, let your customers see that, allow them to vote on what they want to see. So then we get into the development and the testing. And we're going to write some code. We've made the decisions about what technology we're going to use for that. And it doesn't matter. But what are we going to use for version control? Again, maybe GitHub or Bitbucket or Team Foundation Server or whatever you might choose. But again, making sure that everybody has access to it and everybody's trained on it. Has anybody recently moved from something like, I don't know, Subversion or Perforce to Git? Yeah, a few of those. A little bit of a learning curve on that. Yeah, because I worked with a company recently, and they were moving everybody from what was Team Foundation version control, so a centralized version control system, and they were moving to Git. And that was great. They had lots of teams across different locations, and so it was going to work quite well for them. They had massive problems with their branching structures. And so they were moving to Git. But the learning curve to move to that was huge. And of course, the first couple of teams that they just went, oh, now we use Git, we've migrated the code, what could go wrong? All of a sudden, you basically had people who had to go around and fixing up the version control every day because somebody would mess it up. It's a different mindset, a different way of working. So we need to make sure that everybody's happy with that. Unit testing, obviously, is a thing that people kind of talk about, but maybe don't do quite as often as they should. But again, we should have that in there because every time we build our product, we should be getting a build validation. So we should be running a continuous integration process. What tool are we going to use for that? So there's Jenkins or, I don't know, Incredibuild or TeamCity or whatever you might want to use, Bitrise, something like that. But we should be building our code. Every time we commit some code, we should be building that, and we should be running our tests as part of it as well, so that when we get that immediate feedback that we've broken something, so that we don't have a problem that 2 days later we have to go back and figure out what it is that we broke. We want to test constantly. So we have that build verification. And then possibly this is a bit where, I would guess that most people, most development teams here have some form of build system, probably doing continuous integration, maybe not unit test, but maybe. I would take that bet. I think most teams that I speak to now are reasonably happy with version control, reasonably happy with automated builds. But at this point, where we've now built it and we have to release it to the store, or we have that guy who goes in and updates our database at the back end, this stuff tends to be more manual. And it's the thing that we're probably going to mess up. So how do we look at our release? What parts of that can we automate? So if we're still sitting there doing our upload to the store, and we've got to go and get our certificates and our different files to all upload that, that's a massive effort that doesn't need to be there. We can automate that process. So how can we get it out to the various different environments? We want to get it out to our QA teams. We want to get it out to our stakeholders. We want to get it out to our beta users before we go to that store release. Now, if we have to do that multiple times, it's taking up our time that it doesn't need to. So we want to look at the process that we use for that. What do we use to get out to our beta users? So maybe some people here use Test Flight, or maybe just the beta channel in the Play Store. There's tools like Hockey App and Mobile Center and so on that they can use to take that version of the code, push it out to our friendly customers, people who have maybe signed up, they really want to get the latest stuff. They don't mind a few little bugs and problems, but they're more than willing to get that latest release, show all their friends, oh yeah, I've got that latest version that you haven't got. But they'll give us the actionable feedback. They can give us feedback essentially verbally or however we might want to take that. But also, as they're using it, if there's any crash reports, if we can track exactly what they're doing, because again, we're thinking about a production-first mindset, and we're including that stuff in our app. So we're getting constant telemetry about what people are using, what people like, and what problems they're having. And again, the feedback is key. We want to make sure that we are working on the right things. It's no good us just saying, yeah, we think customers will like this. We want to have actionable insight onto our product. Make sure we're using the telemetry that's coming back to drive the product. Okay, let's take a quick look at something here. So I just thought I didn't want to spend too long doing a demo, and also I have to kind of hunch over here to do this. Let me flip across here. If I can do a 3, I'm getting sweaty up here. So this is a tool. This is called Visual Studio Mobile Center. Now, I didn't want this session to be tool specific or anything to do with Microsoft, because I'm sure most of you are using your Macs and so on. That's absolutely fine. And say what I'm showing here is more of a concept than about the actual tool. This happens to be Visual Studio Mobile Center. It's due for release later this year. And what I have here is essentially some code. I've got it checked into, I think this one's pulling out of GitHub. And I've included certain SDKs in my code. Now, it happens to be a Xamarin app. It could just as easily be a native application. It could be React Native. It could be Cordova, PhoneGap, whatever you want to use. And first of all, we're going to make some code changes. We're then going to commit those changes. From that commit, we're going to kick off an automated build. We're then going to sign that application. We're going to distribute it to first of all, we're going to test it. We're going to run some automated UI testing. And then we're going to distribute it to our QA team. And those people are going to take some look at it. They're going to work with it. And while they're doing that, we're taking all that beautiful information about any crashes, what they're using, what they like, and using that then to drive our product. So this is, again, a little thing here. You can see here if I go to my builds. How's that looking up there? Can we see? Maybe go a little bit closer. There we go. So I have a build that's kicking off. And you can see there the last one was built. And then I've got some tests in here as well. And we'll take a look at those in a second. But what I'm going to do, just flip across here. I've got a little code change. And I'm just going to say git. I can't type and talk at the same time. It's difficult. So I'm going to commit those changes. And then I'm just going to push that up. And I'm going to quickly flip back to my thing. And hopefully, in a few seconds, if that refreshes, what we're going to see is that commit has now kicked off the automated build. And hopefully, if everything is working successfully, let's just do a refresh on that. Oh, marvelous. So that's now queued. So that build is going to go through the process. There we go. So it's now queued, and it's going to start to work. Now, I'm going to click into that build, and I'm going to look at the settings on this. Now, what we've got here is, whoa, that's big on that screen. So what we've got here is essentially our code. We're then going to sign that code. So I've just got a key store that I've uploaded there and given it the username and passwords. And then I'm just doing a little test on this one. This is just a run-on-device test. So essentially, it's going to build my code. It's going to sign it. It's then going to submit it to a physical device running in the device cloud and make sure that it launches OK. Now, if I had more time, I'd run some automated tests and actually make sure that we can go through some key user journeys and so on. And then, if everything goes to plan, we're going to distribute that build to our beta testers. They'll get a notification, say, hey, there's a new release of this. Would you like to install it and start working with it? And so that will go off and do its thing. It'll probably take 10 or 15 minutes to do that. But we can see the commit that I just made, the ADDC change. And then what we can do is we can flip over to testing. We can see a few in here, different ones. If I just click into this one, it's just again, we're just making sure the app launches. And so we now have, this is a physical device. I don't have necessary access to it, but it's going to submit this to, what was it, an LG Nexus 5X running Android 7 with a 5.2-inch screen. And so I can see that my app is launching. There's not a problem. So if this was an HTC One, we go back to that review that we saw before, and we can see that it is actually launching. And of course, I've got much more detail about this, how long it was taking to go through that process. And I would build that up with the various things. And then I might think about, okay, well, now we want to run some UI tests. What devices, how's that looking on there? What devices do we need to test on? What's the minimum device that will give us that confidence? So I might throw in some old Android devices, some new Android devices, large form factor, small form factor, maybe the most popular device, or even better, I'm going to track what my users are accessing my device with, and then I'm going to go and test on those. So find the, I don't know, the first 10 most popular devices that are accessing my app, and then that's what I'm going to test on. So I can set up my device sets. Then I'm going to go to my distribution. And I can see my different users here. So I've got a couple of things. So I might have my stakeholders, my beta testers, friendly customers. I can distribute to the different people, and they will say they will get, these are just my colleagues, and they will see which releases have happened. So I probably have a couple of releases in there. So these are getting versioned as well as part of my build system. I'm throwing this in. And again, you can use any number of tools to do this. And if we want to go and release straight to the store, that's absolutely fine. We also have any crashes that are happening. I don't have any crashes in my sample app. But more importantly, we have the analytics about our app. So this is coming back constantly as we test things, as we're doing our testing, we're giving it to our users. This information is constantly coming back. So things like, what are the top devices? How long are people using my app for? So we want our app to be as sticky as possible. We want people to spend time, the minute they're waiting for somebody at, outside the pub, they bring out the phone and they're using our app for as long as possible. I want to make sure it's nice and sticky. We can see daily sessions per user, things like that. And again, you can see where people are using it, the language that they're accessing it with. And of course, you can use, I don't know, Fabric, Raygun, Hockey app. It doesn't really matter what tool you're using to do this, but we want to collect that information. So I don't know if my build is probably still going, but there we go, still building away there. And of course, I can track that if I want to go and have a look at the build. We can go and see what's happening on there. So just to finish up, a couple of key things. Visualizing that end-to-end process. And again, you might be a small team. You think, yeah, you know what, we just do this. It's fine. We don't need to worry about our process. But find out where you're getting bottlenecks, where you have breakdowns in communication, where you're spending a lot of time doing something that you could automate it. Spend a little bit of time doing it up front, and then continue. You get that benefit going forward. I mentioned slow down to speed up. One of the big things here is limiting your work in progress. Don't take on too much at once. Get something done and get it done correctly and get it out there to your users, then move on. Don't have, again, I see this a lot, where you have a dev team and they go, yeah, we're just doing this thing, we've done this thing, we've done this thing. We've completed all our dev tasks, let's give that to the test team now. The test team are drowning in work. And of course, if the test team haven't tested it either, we're going to push it out to the users without being tested, or it's just going to delay the release of the app. Have a focus on quality. Again, make sure that we're producing that every single sprint and using the validated learning to drive the backlog. We want to automate where possible, so make sure we're building, automated testing, ideally automated releases as well. And final point there is continuously improve. This isn't a case of we do DevOps now and everything is fine. Start small. Find a small project, find a few small things to improve on, and then continually improve. After each sprint, do a retrospective. What went well? Where are we still seeing problems? And make sure that we're continually striving to have the shortest cycle time and the best quality product that we can have. with that, I think I'm done. So I think we have a little bit of time for any questions, if anybody. All right, great. Question there.
Hi, Richard.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for showing the mobile center.
Cool.
It's really save time from like all the manual launching tasks, and it's like beautiful design material as well. I have a question about what you said earlier about the relationship between QA and development. So I see in this process you propose, it's easy to get the new build and even get notified about that. But But I still don't see how we can encourage like QA to get out of the desk asking the developer, is this what it's supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think this comes back to one of the things we spend a lot of time doing when we speak to development teams, and again, for development, I'm talking about design, development, and test, is that they tend to work separately. And what we don't want is the dev team over here, the test team over here. We will literally take them and physically co-locate them if possible, if it's not outsourced or something. But we need the dev team and the test team working together. So again, it's not a case of we will do the development and then we'll have it test it. The testing team should be involved with the developers right at the starting point. So as we're designing a feature and we're saying, okay, well, it should do this, the test team should be involved in that design process and that thinking about, well, if we do it this way, it'll be easier to test. So they aren't a secondary process. I think it's a case of bringing them as close to the dev team as possible.
Do you have like any real story to tell, or like even some example of like getting a QA sitting between dev or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to process. And I say I've seen this in countless customers, that the test team is very much seen as kind of second-class citizens. And so the developers don't consider themselves testers. Again, if you look at a Scrum process, you don't have developers and testers. Everybody is development. And so everybody's responsibility is quality. So it's not a case of, and again, this is another one that comes up a lot. The QA team or the test team are gold on how many bugs they can find. That's no good. Finding bugs is not what we want. What we want is the quality of the product to be better. So actually, rather than raising that bug, why not go and have a conversation with the dev team and say, you know, especially if it's still in development, go and have a word and we can change that. We don't have to raise a bug and communicate through tools. And again, it's not an easy thing. It's still a problem for most teams. But I think the closer we can have them together, even physically co-locate it, it will make that better.
I agree. Thank you.
Hi, Richard.
Hi.
Thanks for the talk. I have a question with regards to what is the minimum thing that you can do to really kind of get some value. For example, like especially for startups, startups a lot of times they do these kind of things pretty late in the process. They just go on, like start developing and doing stuff, trying to get things out as fast as possible. So what would you recommend to startups with a limited budget? Hey, you can at least do this, and this would be helpful for you.
Yeah. I think that's fair to say. You look at most, if we're looking at tools, and again, you start up, maybe you're quite small, you haven't got those communication issues that maybe larger teams will have. So I suppose number one, it's about getting a little bit of process in place, and also looking at the tooling that you're using. And again, what will quite often happen is we're just bashing away, we're just doing things, and then we'll go and release that and see what happens. There might not be much in the way of testing. There might not be much in the way of a backlog or a plan. We're just building things and seeing what happens. And so I think getting some of those processes in place early. You don't have to go too heavy, but just have a backlog, have a plan, have some form of testing. So again, focusing on quality, because that mentality of we're just hacking this thing together will eventually bite you in the bum. It's as soon as you start to get popular, you get more users, you start to add more features, all those problems that were in there before are just going to get worse. So I think a focus on quality, focus on at least having some form of plan and get that down, because you will, as you become bigger, need to have that. Around tooling, if you're thinking about automated build, there are a number of tools out there. So Bitrise have a free version, Mobile Center has a free version, Visual Studio Team Services have a free version. There are lots of things that we can make use of with basically no outlay on that, especially as we're a small team.
So, I mean, for example, we have like backend, web front end, different platforms. Then we also have mobile apps. Yep. So we are running Jenkins and like the build automation and everything. So for us, we're always trying to use like one platform. And that's why, you know, for me personally, I would think like, okay, which part would I kind of like put on your platform versus doing what I have already?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my sort of intention for this talk was not to say, hey, come and use Microsoft platform. We obviously have some great tools out there, but I would look at the tools that you already have in-house. If you've got skills in that, how can we borrow from those skills? So for instance, you take Jenkins. It's not the easiest thing to work with, but you probably have some really skilled Jenkins engineers. Try and bring them into the team for a short while and allow them to, I mean, for instance, building the mobile app, deploying it to some form of test environment, and then running some automated tests. We can do all of that through Jenkins, no problem at all. But getting those tasks to, like, for instance, let's say Xamarin Test Cloud or Mobile Center, we need a custom task which will go and do that. So if we can borrow from those skills that we already have, rather than just throwing more tools at the problem, I think that's definitely the way to go. Thank you.